A dark figure stops me dead in my tracks. My body is one big heartbeat. What's that in his hand? It's short. It's black. It fires. Gun smoke chokes the air. And just like that, he's gone. All that's left is a single slug lodged into the wall right above my head. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. As an aspiring attorney, I had hoped to stand for liberty, for justice, for freedom. Little did I know I'd first have to stand for myself. And I'll do the same for you. I grew up walking the halls of the police department in my footy pajamas, feeding treats to the canines. My mom was a sergeant. My dad was a chief. I implicitly trusted law enforcement. I never could have imagined that being the victim of a home invasion burglary would change my life forever. So I'm at the courthouse talking to who I thought was a lawyer. He says, "So you're a law student with no criminal record. Some jerk-off breaks into your house and they charge you with burglary? Come on, we gotta get these charges dropped." Little did I know, the only thing he'd be dropping was me. I'd soon never see him or my $5,000 ever again. But he continues. "So are you seeing anybody? In the off case we do go to trial, I might need you to get married, and fast. Look, I know juries. Juries like married people." And just like that, I went from a law student, like legally blonde, no, legally black, to 90-day fiance on the hunt for a husband. As an aside, I actually did meet my husband, so I guess sometimes when you lose, you really win. But I was about to lose a lot. My descent into the criminal justice system started like this. Job, gone. Friends, gone. Reputation, so gone. The ability to sleep at night? Oh, you mean without nightmares? Not that I can remember. Pretty much all I had left was church and hopefully law school. Now, I'd originally applied to law school thinking, I'm not smart enough to take the bar or even graduate. Heck, I couldn't even type. But as I'm pleading with the admins to let me stay in school despite these horrific charges, I was told, "You're one of the ones that's gonna pass the bar. You'll beat these charges. You'll make us proud." Imagine if I hadn't fought to stay in school. I never would have heard those words. And it was those words that gave me the strength to hold my head up high. When I got an email from a student saying, "You don't deserve to be here." It was those words that gave me the strength to not only graduate, but to graduate with honors. It was those words that gave me the strength to not only take the bar, but to retake the bar and finally pass it my second time. Sometimes when you think you've been buried, you've actually just been planted, because that's when the growth starts. American television host Steve Harvey once said, "You gotta have dirt on you, because dirt gives your seed the strength to push through and to grow." That being said, if someone has been throwing dirt on you for 4 years, climb out of the hole, because obviously they are trying to bury you. And for me, I was desperate to get out at that point. I'd been told innocent isn't enough to get by at trial. So I had a choice to make. Either take a plea or go to trial, meaning 12 months or 12 years. What will you choose? And what if I told you that 90% of convictions come from plea agreements? That prosecutors have carte blanche to charge anyone they want with any crime they want. And just like in a poker game, they're legally allowed to bluff, to lie, or to hide their cards in the hopes that you'll fold. So what did I do? I folded. And just like that, I went from 90-day fiance to orange is the new black. But All it took was one look in my mother's eyes, and I knew, we gotta fight this. So I withdrew my plea. Now, my attorney, having just negotiated this deal, was not pleased. So for the second time, I was ghosted. But having passed the bar, it stood to reason I should have the skills necessary to defend a case, right? Wrong. Everybody, and I mean everybody, told me, don't defend yourself. A man who represents himself has a fool for a client. But I did it anyway. And foolish or not, my law school education did not save me from looking foolish at trial. But studies show that self-represented defendants rarely plead guilty and are acquitted more often than defendants represented by an attorney. How is that possible? It's because when we stand for ourselves, we show the world that we're worth standing for. So what areas do you find that you could stand for yourself, but you choose not to? Is it setting boundaries in a relationship? Advocating for yourself at the doctor's office? Is it voicing the unpopular opinion in the workplace? And by not standing for yourself, are you unknowingly showing the world that you're not worth standing for? Due to plea bargaining, trials on the merits have become virtually extinct. And with conviction rates raising to nearly 100%, it's fueled mass incarceration to the point of 2.4 million Americans, 25% of whom are Black Americans. So the question is, why do so many people plead guilty? Imagine, I've charged you with a crime. The evidence of your so-called guilt is on these cards. But unless you go to trial, I have no legal obligation to show them to you. So what I'll tell you is this. You should definitely plead guilty, because I've got DNA evidence. What I won't tell you is we mishandled the sample, and it's probably not even your DNA. I might tell you, you should plead guilty. We know you're the one. What I won't tell you is we've got 3 other suspects. One of them confessed to the crime this morning. But because you've been in lockup for almost a year because you couldn't afford bail, we've got to double down and get you to plead to something. Or you could sue us for wrongful incarceration. I might tell you, we've got a handful of witnesses. What I won't tell you is they're non-percipient witnesses, meaning they were there, we interviewed them, and they didn't see anything, so they can't testify to anything. I might tell you, there's a mountain of evidence pointing to your guilt. What I won't tell you is, there's a good pile of evidence pointing to your innocence. So what I'll do is have you sign a waiver of your right to appeal the conviction after you plead guilty, just in case you find out about all the exculpatory evidence we didn't show you. Finally, my personal favorite, the trial penalty. That's where I threaten you with 15 years if you go to trial, but offer you 7 if you plead guilty right here and now. What I didn't tell you, or your lawyer, was that your maximum was really only 8 to begin with, so you didn't even really get a deal. You gotta ask yourself, if their hand is really as good as they say it is, why not make them play it every time? And what would the world look like if everyone just went to trial? How many people could be saved from mass incarceration by just going to trial? Now, if prosecutors were made to plead and prove every crime they charged, fewer crimes would be charged. They would utilize diversion programs. They would utilize juvenile offender programs. They would reduce felonies to misdemeanors. They would use restorative justice programs. And ultimately, they would imprison fewer people. Now, I know what you're thinking. Mass incarceration doesn't affect me, but it does. You see, when resources are wasted prosecuting innocent people, actual criminals go free and taxpayers foot the bill. How much is that bill? Good question. The cost to prosecute, police, and imprison our own people, $759 million every single day. That's more than some nations spend per year on their military budget, their war chest. Mass incarceration is like a war. Not a war on crime, but a war on people, on our own people. And unless we're able to ensure equality and fairness under the law for each and every one of our people, we can't ensure equality and fairness under the law for any of our people. Now, this is what's led some people that mass incarceration is similar to Jim Crow, the law that was eradicated after the Civil Rights Movement. So, the question is, if mass incarceration is the new Jim Crow, how did we deal with the old one? Quote, "Mine was the first cry for justice, and a loud one. When it comes to justice, it's just not easy to get. You have to stand up and say, this is not right." And I did. Claudette Colvin. You may not have heard of her. She's also known as the other Rosa Parks. According to historians, in the fight against bus segregation, a form of Jim Crow, it was actually Claudette Colvin who inspired Rosa Parks. You see, both women were jailed and arrested for refusing to give up their seats on the bus. Both women bailed out, went to trial, and were convicted for refusing to give up their seats on the bus. Neither of them pled guilty. The community, seeing what had been done, stood up and boycotted the segregated buses. Why then haven't most of us ever heard of Claudette Colvin? Well, because of optics. Civil rights leaders thought that Rosa Parks would be a better face of the movement because she was fair-skinned and she was married. There goes that married thing again. Anyway, when it was all said and done, it was Claudette Colvin's testimony to a United States District Court that led a 3-judge panel to declare bus segregation unconstitutional, which led to their convictions being overturned. But young Claudette Colvin's battle would not end here. See, in addition to charging her with violating the bus ordinance, they also falsely charged her with resisting arrest. And this charge would stay with her, negatively impacting employment opportunities and living conditions until 2021, just 2 years ago, when Claudette Colvin, at age 82, would finally be able to have the wrongful conviction expunged from her criminal record. Wrongful convictions and false charges impact lives forever, and we cannot continue being willful participants in our own demise. In the fight against mass incarceration, giving up your right to trial is like giving up your seat on the bus. By going to trial, we hold the system accountable. Frivolous charges will be scrutinized, legitimate charges will stand, and overcharging will stop. Nigerian author Lovey Ajayi Jones says that for a lot of dominoes to fall, one must fall first. After having stood for my innocence for nearly 7 years, I can honestly say I'm willing to fall if it means even one less American being churned through the system without a fight. So, are you willing to stand for you yet? If so, here's how you do it in 4 steps. 1, determine whether you've been buried or if you've just been planted. 2, manage whose words you let in your head. 3, ignore adversity. 4, be the domino. Don't be afraid to be the first to stand or to fall. Now, if you would, turn to someone next to you and tell them you are worth standing for. You are worth standing for. And now with me, I am worth standing for. In closing, this was not legal advice and no attorney-client relationship has been formed. Thank you.